pushing a very dangerous proposal for Africa called AGRA, the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, which basically means chemical fertilizers. That's why the first column here is about how much chemical fertilizers and industrial farming contribute to climate change. That's Norman Borlaug, who adapted plants to chemicals. Now the big push is coming from Bill Gates.
Yeah.
So this is a toxic economy, and its roots are in war. All the chemicals we use in agriculture came from war.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates is the carrier of this toxic future today. And then there are Monsantos and there are Syngentas and the fertilizer companies, whom I call the Exxons of agriculture. They're driving the language of this. Yara, Cargill. So we've to get out of this toxic economy, toxic politics. We've got to turn to biodiversity and the earth. And we've got to start realizing that for everything that's produced through toxics, we have an ecological alternative.
Yeah.
For the chemical farming, we have organic farming. For chemical fibers, petrochemical fibers, we have natural fibers. And everything that we do with the earth protects the earth, reduces the pollution, creates more meaningful work, increases democracy. So we have two parts very clearly coming out of the COP. A Bill Gates riding high and saying, I took software which belonged to everyone, made it my property, collected royalties, became a billionaire out of nothing, out of stolen software, and now I'll behave as if I'm the big philanthropist. He's a thief. And all of the 1% solutions are solutions of theft. And something extremely serious is at stake. I have a book called Making Peace with the Earth, in which I have a whole chapter on what they're calling the green economy, where they really are appropriating our language of green and then saying, no, a woman carrying twigs to make food, that's polluting. We're going to ban it. People having their own seats, we won't allow it. So they would like to take the 75% economy of the world, which is what I call the biodiversity economy, which is all of our countries, which is large parts of the new movements in the north, and they're trying very hard to say, we'll criminalize that. We will define what's innovation, we'll define what's pollution, we'll define what's clean, we'll define what's smart. These are the code words of their new empire. Smart, innovation, clean. We want life. They don't use the word life. They're scared of life.
What about the geoengineering?
That's part of the fourth solution I mentioned here. And he's financing it.
That's why
all of you, I suggest, keep track of Bill Gates. He is going to be the biggest continuer of this model that must change.
Is he linked with that? With
he is biggest financier. Biggest financier of geoengineering projects. Biggest.
Yeah. And Monsanto too is linked with that?
Monsanto maybe, for sure, because Monsanto is breeding for heavy metals.
Okay, and because it's the soil becomes dry with the geoengineering, so Monsanto could provide the solution, right?
Well, you know, Monsanto has bought. If you read that sheet I've given, Monsanto has bought the world's biggest climate data corporation. It has bought the world's biggest soil data corporation. And basically what they're looking for, I mean, we've seen what happened with seed. Monsanto said, I'm going to own the seed. And I'll collect royalties. And I'll push GMOs because that way I can pretend I invented the seed. They're now looking for trapping farmers into buying soil and climate data from them. Which is why I am totally against carbon trading. Because living carbon, you know, a tree is living carbon. And I've critiqued the G8. Say you can't decarbonize the world, we'd be dead. What you need to do is get rid of fossil fuels. Why are they using the term decarbonization? They're using it to make the living carbon economy of people illegal. And there are enough young people who feel, solar, wonderful. A few twigs, dirty. No, the twigs are recycling the carbon that was fixed in that twig. They're not generating carbon or emissions beyond the carbon cycle. It's a closed cycle. Fossil burning is going beyond the cycle. And I'm reading more and more items in India. First village to become clean, to ban biomass and shift to fossil energy. And they're calling it clean. So there's a twist in the perception of what's clean. And they're already waiting to think of, not only will they control agriculture. Mr. Gates has put up a plan for one agriculture. All universities working through him. He's already privatizing the world's public gene banks. All. The CG system, it's called the Consultative Group of International Agriculture Research, where our seeds are kept. He's using his money to destroy the public's breeding and saying, hand this over to the corporations. Then soil, instead of you knowing what the soil is like, instead of a local lab working with farmers to say, this is your soil fertility, this is your soil food web, satellites are going to be used. And Monsanto has already made an agreement with Deere, you know, the tractor company, that in those machines they're going to fix Monsanto spyware, it's called. So when the tractor moves, it's going to send the data of what the farmer grew, which variety he grew, how much crop he had. And they're looking for a total control system that has already destroyed the planet, but pretending it's clean now. And so what do we need? What we need at this point is a much deeper understanding of ecological processes. To not get confused with this language. A much deeper celebration of life, our lives, the planet's life, and a much deeper courage to say no to this rubbish.
I have another question.
Well, let others ask if they have another question. Does anyone have? Yeah.
I think on this kind of, on this theme of centralization, of corporate kind of control and corporations, I guess just wondering about your comments on to what extent, Dr. Shiva, we will be able to find the solutions within the framework of capitalism or neoliberalism, and to what extent those policies that are based upon that groundwork is actually, they're not the ways to go forward.
Well, you know, change never comes through abstractions. Change comes in the concrete. And within the concrete, you can be in another paradigm. Okay? I might be living in a world dominated by industrial agriculture, but for 30 years I have saved seeds. I've done organic farming and changed the world and created another world. You don't have a full systems replacement as a full system replacement, except in the mind. In the mind, you can have an immediate systems change, which is called a paradigm change. On the ground, you grow the alternative.
Just following on from that question, do you think there are any genuine alliances you can have with multinational corporations? So, like, for example, Enel, which was the energy company in Italy, is making friends with Greenpeace because they want to actually change the way that they act. The CEOs are saying they want to actually do something very different, which could be a stand against other multinationals like Monsanto.
Yeah. You know, I'm trained as a physicist. I dealt only with abstractions. I used to believe the world can be explained in algebraic symbols, and words were nonsense. I realize today that the only place you can answer any question is in a concrete situation, not in the abstract. So your question is an abstract question. You know, it's concrete for Greenpeace. They've come to Greenpeace, fine. But you don't generalize. In the concrete, you figure out, yes, this particular company is changing in this way. This particular organization feels it has the confidence to not be co-opted by this change. Then it's fine. I really feel the biggest trap we have right now is living in generalizations. We've got to get rooted. The word we have evolved in the organic movement is humus. Humus is living soil. Living soil is made by living organisms. Okay? The first time I heard the word biochar came from the biofuel industry. Alan Bates might be totally well-meaning, but biochar is only making charcoal by burning biomass without oxygen. That's all it is. And there is an illusion being created that that's the point where carbon dioxide gets fixed. No, carbon dioxide is fixed in the living plant through photosynthesis. There's no new fixing at the time of burning. So the first is it's distorting our perception of the carbon cycle. And it's making us forget photosynthesis. Second, I have watched and witnessed and I've heard corporations talk about how now they can send their carbon-rich waste as fertilizer and biochar. We had to fight Coca-Cola selling its toxic waste, giving its toxic waste in Plachimada as carbon-rich fertilizer. I've seen a cement factory in Orissa saying, here's biochar. Because in biochar, you don't explain the source. It just has to be carbon-rich. You can get into the trap that we got into with the mad cow disease. Cows like to graze grass. They made intensive feed. The intensive feed has a nice little label, this much iron, this much protein, this much calcium. This is the diet your cow needs. Cows started to get diseased. They just chopped them up, rendered them, fed them to the cows. Perfect constitution. Perfect. The nutrition was perfect. Gave the cows mad cow, killed 12 people in England till we had rice. So all I'm saying is let's bring process back into our thinking. Let us bring transparency into what started as what and ended as what, and what did it do along the way, what externalities, what profits, what concentration, what toxics. So focusing on biochar could make us forget the real responsibility of growing organic matter, recycling organic matter, enhancing humus. The displacement of the word humus is the most dangerous part of the language of bioculture. And I'm saying some people will be well-meaning, some practices might mix humus and biochar and it might all work. But it's the displacement in our imagination that to me is the place where we are now getting colonized. Because as it is, humanity is so estranged from its life. And any step that takes us further down the estrangement road will leave us less capable of healing the earth and us ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, so it seems like part of the solution would be that more people participate in community kind of connection to the planet. People actually building communities on the ground that reclaim GMO corn and soya fields and start building kind of the schools and the farms that are necessary to actually remediating the planet.
Yeah.
What can we do to actually encourage this more? What can we do to make more people step into this role? Because it seems like this is a lost kind of field of education or art that many people are not connecting to, particularly in the West, obviously.
Well, the first thing again we have to do is unlearn the idea of the reductionist worldview that we are atoms in society, that we are each of us individuals locked into loneliness. We've got to start realizing that we are of the earth and we are of community. Even when we pretend in our minds we are isolated, if our mothers and fathers weren't there, we wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. If someone hadn't taken care of us, we'd have died along the way. So, to be aware of the network of ecological and social relationships that make us means to be aware of community, earth community, social community. And with that awareness, to build the actual links, beginning with whatever you're fond of doing. If you like to garden, reclaim cornfields. If you like education, work with children. If you like to shift the economy, do what Rob Hopkins does, create local currency. If what you like to do is healing, learn how to heal without the same companies that are giving us the poisons in agriculture then selling us the medicines with patents. Huh?
So I've seen that education is actually also becoming colonized by companies like Monsanto and the likes of them. Is it time for a radical shift to, drop out of schools? Because if we're going to send our children to the places where they're going to come back and learn the ways of Monsanto's paradigm, is it time to just turn away from the traditional education system?
I'd put it in a different way. Is it time to build another education system? And I would say yes. That's why not only have I built Navdanya for seed-saving organic farming, I've built an Earth University for another education. And you can all go to the website of Navdanya. I think it's written here, www.navdanya.org, and you'll find the Earth University. But these kind of initiatives are being created everywhere. I don't think many of you got the opportunity to see the film about tomorrow, Demain. And it's beautiful because it has agriculture, it has economy, it has democracy, and it has education. How Finland, which has the highest performance rates in school education, just gave up the old model and learned from Montessori and Steiner to create a public education system. So it is time for another education, because all our education, if you think of it, earlier education was the scholastics, the church controlled it. That gave way with the rise of industrialism and capitalism to university education, where you were given a fragmented, one-dimensional knowledge to do one thing. And you knew nothing else. And then, now they're telling you, well, that's not good enough. You've got to learn totally new things. And you have to have new skills. And all the skills are to fit into a global economy which has place for 3% humanity. We've done these calculations here. 3% humanity would be controlled, would have space in a corporate global economy. And that means the rest are redundant. So, of course, you need another education. Yeah.
You are concretely describing future totalitarianism with Monsanto, Bill Gates, and all that stuff. How, as citizens, we can act concretely? Well, you were mentioning the communities, but in 2050, 70% of the population will be urban. So do you think we have to do it in the urban scale, or we have to go back to the soil and the country and beginning to work on self-sufficiency?
Yeah. One more thing we have to really learn to unlearn is we are made to think in linear pattern and with an inevitability that this is the way things work. We are made to think, urbanization. Why is there more urbanization? Because globalization and industrial agriculture has rendered farming unviable through dishonesty. Farmers aren't earning enough. Not in France, not in India, not in Africa. Because the system is designed to sell high-cost inputs to the farmers, buy cheap commodities from them. That's an economic system that can't sustain itself. But the corporations make it both ways. They make profits by selling inputs and by buying cheap commodities. And then they have vertical integration to make profits further down the line. So Urbanization is not an inevitability. My country, because the British had exploited us, they left us with a Great Bengal famine. When we became independent, the first thing we did was land reform. Second thing we did was universal public food security. Between the two of them, the fact that small peasants got a fair price and had a market through the public food meant that small farmers were totally viable in India. Which is why it's not an accident that India, even now, is about 60% farmers. It's by policy design. And if we make a policy design that we are going to support small farmers, we are going to recognize agroecology as a science, we're going to ensure no one can pay too little for what a farmer produces. Who would want to be on the land? Who would want to commute 3 hours, live in a boring job, sit at a computer, make money for some speculator? We would have a reverse migration of a huge kind. That's one part of the question. So we need to stop what World Bank wants us to think, inevitable that more and more people will move. No. More and more people could move in the other way if we get justice in place. And we got more initiatives. I launched here, and this group AMAP, and you know, we have these, I'm going to launch this pact on the 5th. It's a pact for the protection of the earth and each other. And you're all welcome. The French is here, and the English is there. AMAP are urban people who became farmers. Yeah? The managers, chemists, and now they had brought me here to launch the Greater Paris region organic system. What are we looking towards? That the city, instead of Parisians eating junk that's coming from wherever it's cheapest to get, they get organic from their closest farmers. And that relationship of a new food economy does two things. It allows the citizens to get good food they know is healthy for them, but it also allows resources to be plowed back to the farm so that the farm becomes viable. You need to do that. But in addition to that, you need to bring the village into the city. When I say village to the city, we need to do more urban farming. It's totally possible. It's happening. It's the biggest revolution taking place today. Urban gardens. Biggest.
Yeah, my last question. I suppose.
Promise? Last?
My question is going about solar electrical engineering, because like presently solar engineering is gradually taking over in Africa. My question is that, is it solar engineering, is it a perfect green electrical engineering system for Africa, or it's something that is doing more harm than good to the people of Africa? Because like these solar batteries that store this engineering, they are very harmful to human beings, to the life of citizens. And most of these things are not taken care of by some of this engineering or some local authorities that are controlling this thing. They are just left like that in the street, and it's very harmful, especially to children. So do you think this is something that is good for Africa?
Well,
or what?
you know, this is the way we've repeatedly said, you need to do full cost accounting. And the full cost includes all ecological externalities and all social externalities. And that's why the language was created, which is somehow being forgotten again, called life cycle approach. Take the life cycle of a product and then assess. Hey, Alberto. Hello. Ecuador and Greece, the whole world is here.
We're here with you.
So we need, you know, it's that third column in this poster that's the most important one, because there's such rapid spread of false solutions. I'm not saying decentralized solar is not good, and there is now all kinds of new work being done to get rid of the battery. And you don't need the battery if all you do is heat your water, and there are other purposes for which you don't. But Bill Gates is attacking decentralized energy. He wants centralized systems. Like I said, he wants one agriculture for the whole world. He will want one energy system, which he controls. He's already moving. December's come, no? In December, he wanted to launch a microchip for remote control of women's fertility in the third world, where there's a microchip, and whether I will have a baby or not will be decided by Mr. Gates or an institution he creates. So, I mean, he is the most amazing, total control freak who could imagine. And his funny, lost grin tells me the guy is lost. He is lost. He doesn't know who he is, except that money controls the world. That's all he knows. You know? And, we are being ruled by insanity. It's a very serious situation.
Yeah. Where could we find a Bill Gates that could finance your way?
I don't need Bill Gates' style of money at all. Have you noticed how much good work is coming through crowdsourcing? This film Tomorrow was financed through crowdsourcing. They didn't have to go to Bill Gates. My son, who just arrived, was saying, I supported this. He's a photographer. A new bag for photographers. He contributed to the crowdsourcing. And it comes back to community. We will either see ourselves as powerless, and we will constantly delegate power to governments that don't care, and people like Gates, who, while pretending to be a philanthropist, is only thinking how to make the next buck. He's actually, everything he's doing is making a new business opportunity. And we will constantly say, oh, we are too poor, we are too stupid, we are too powerless. The minute we reclaim power and say we have the power to make change, we have the power through community to mobilize resources. I've built the organic movement in India only through recycling the money. I think in the first time I must have put some money down to make sure the farmers' products reach the market, but after that it circulates. So we have to move from a linear extractive economy where everything moves to the 1%, the resources of the earth, the wealth of the people, into a circular economy where wealth starts to circulate, where energy starts to circulate in nature, in community, nutrition starts to circulate in nature, in community, water starts to circulate in nature, in community. And I want to introduce to you Alberto Costa, who was the person who drafted the Ecuadorian constitution that recognized the rights of nature, which of course is now being undermined, and that's a different issue. But, so,
I think that power is removed from government and from the 1% when we remove our focus from them, right? Because, we consent to give them power by following them. And I think we're already starting to do a good job by being here, not doing that, and responding to the grassroots. So my question is, in your experience in India, how do you go about celebrating the farmer more? How do you go about making it more attractive, more consumable for people to want to go back to the rural areas?
So the first is, we've turned seed into a celebration. The seed had been rendered invisible. And then it popped up as Monsanto's invention. So we bring out the seeds. Now, do I have? I'm going to show you. This is how we celebrate. Next year is the year of pulses. Yeah? So we've already started preparing. I've already done an analysis of how you don't have to take fossil fuels, burn them at 550 degrees, create a toxic fertilizer which ruins the climate, 300 times more lethal than carbon dioxide, kills our oceans, destroys our soils, removes this wonderful protein from our diet, when the pulses do it non-violently with the rhizobium. So the diversity, we celebrate through food festivals. Like I said, we have an Earth University. where some courses are about the big picture, but many are just how to farm better. And I have to tell you, in the last 10 years, remind me now, Pavlos is here from Greece, and he spent a very long time with us in India. And we're now getting software engineers, we are getting financial people. People say, I made all the money I could, but I'm not happy. Now I want to be a farmer. So I always say, after everything else, it's the soil that's calling you. When you're bored and rich, or you're poor and disposable, either way, for both of you, it's the soil that's calling you. And of course we bring the best of science to it. What they call science is not science. Because if you don't know the soil and its web of life, see, what Monsanto is selling as soil science is what can be measured from a satellite through GPS, which at best can be the chemicals in the soil, but not that invisible mycorrhiza, which is the real life of the soil that makes the human. So all of this, knowledge, practice, celebration, and you've eaten a good meal. I'm eating a wonderful risotto, and I have to tell the chef, it is so good. And talking about, I've been to the COP at Le Bourget twice. It is so miserable. They don't even have water to drink. It's like torture has to be the way you live. And here it is, celebration has to be the way you live. Yeah.
So you mentioned that there's, a solution that might come from local currencies, right? Putting in money at the beginning, but then having that money circulate in and of itself within the community. I think fundamentally, our financial system is not allowing us to have that kind of that ability to let that money stay within the pockets of the people, right? It's always ending up in banks, and the banks are controlling the interest rates, all these things. So there's always this kind of financial engineering that is kind of keeping people poor, essentially. What role do you feel kind of alternative currencies or local currencies might be able to have in, restoring kind of the balance in humanity, the balance in what we really need for those local communities to actually thrive?
When I said circular economy, I didn't mean only circulation of money.
Of course, yes.
Because money is a means at the end of a process.
Absolutely.
Long before that, you have circulation of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
You have mutual give and take. So for the South, for the countries of the South, I think the first step for us is to prevent the commodification of our resources and lives. So I have fought against the privatization of water, and we won every battle. I have fought against patenting of our seeds and biopiracy. I have won every battle on that. The issue of climate change, more complicated. I've written a book called Soil Not Oil, and there will be copies at the table downstairs where my colleagues are there. In Soil Not Oil, I've shown how emissions trading is not a solution, and in effect, what the climate discourse has done is first you allowed corporations to privatize the atmosphere by dumping their waste, the atmospheric waste, into the atmosphere. In a way, climate change is like the garbage dump that we see. It's a landfill in the air, but causing similar problems. Then the solution in Kyoto Protocol was, we will allocate this air and atmosphere to the polluters. So they took our commons second time over and handed it over to the polluters, who then did emissions trading, made lots of money out of it. Pollution was to come down by 5%, went up by 16% in the Kyoto period. And all this is about beyond Kyoto. Now they're working new ways to do more commodification, carbon trading, soil carbon monitoring, data selling, all of this is commodity. So commodification takes something that is ours and is shared, turns it into a commodity that we must buy from those who stole it. That makes us poorer. 300,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide in this model of seed commodification. if we don't get the full price for what we sell, if we only prepare commodities for the global market, farmers will always be losers. If they grow food for a neighbor, they will always have the circular economy. That's what this AMAP, Greater Paris region is. That's what the Navdanya model of circulation is. Farmers get more. They don't have to commit suicide. They do organic. Nothing goes out. Citizens get healthier food. They don't have to spend millions on healthcare. You do a short circuit, and that short circuit means both sides do better. The corporations, you don't need. I call it the global heart bypass. It's like the arteries of the global economy are clogged with corporate greed. And you can either say, oh, when will I be big enough to do the surgery on corporations? Or you can just say, I'll just do a bypass. Yeah? And the bypass is in our hands to make, and that's the community initiative, that's the ecological awareness, that is the recognition that just because we are of the earth, we come with power. Does the plant say, oh, there's no Mr. Bill Gates to fund me to grow? That's it.
That's great.
Yeah, I have a question. I agree with you, but the problem is Mr. Gates won't stop because we ask him, and we are obliged to live with these people, and how can we deal with them? How can you make Bill Gates or these companies your allies, or will be there a kind of war or a kind of struggle, because it's very important. Bill Gates now is at Le Bourget and we're here at Gare du Nord, but we know that they are very powerful, and if we don't try to get everyone, I think there will be a lot of people losing if we are in a kind of fight. So how can we do to make your solution their solution, and to change the kind of program, the kind of software they have in mind?
I just talked about this bypass.
Yeah, but bypass, they will still live. They will still be there.
Well, again, when I started to deal with Monsanto, I dealt with the recognition that here's a company which had no role in seeds, wanting to control our seeds. You don't think of Monsanto as the company that controls the seed. You see it as an illegitimate actor that wants to take control of your seed. Now, if you want to take control of your seed, you just stand there and say, sorry. That's what we have to say to Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a newcomer. 5 years, 10 years ago, he starts Agra. Then he's jumping into this. He's already taken over the WHO and the health system, right? We can either say, oh, Mr. Gates has always been powerful, he's always been around. No, he's an upstart. He's an upstart who's a nobody in the history of the evolution of this planet. He's a nobody in the history of evolution of our cultures. He's a nobody in the history of democracy. And I said it's very wrong that governments, which are meeting for an interstate, intergovernmental gathering, allow him to stand with them. They are giving up their power of representing democratic societies. And they are inviting him to take control. So, the two things we have to do. First, realize he is trying. It's like someone's coming to steal your house. Do you say, oh my God, this man, he's so powerful, and he's taken my house, and now I will have to convince him that he thinks like me? No, you mobilize the mechanisms that there are to say you can't grab my land or my house, because it's illegal. Theft is illegal. We have to do more and more of that. We are finding Gates is pushing the GMO golden rice, the GMO bengal in Bangladesh now, because he's lost everywhere else. We have to continue those movements. And the second is we have to build a better alternative, which is why we have to increase the vocabulary beyond his 4 words. We have a very rich vocabulary. Yeah.
So no dialogue with that people?
No, the issue is I don't mind the dialogue. I can tell you, because I have critiqued AGRA so much, the Alliance for the Green Revolution, and the GMOs, I have so many friends who say, "Oh, but you should talk to Bill Gates." I said, sure, fix a meeting. Poor guys, 10 years they have spent trying to fix an appointment. I'm not going to wait to fix an appointment with Bill Gates. In my life, soil bacteria is a more significant being on this planet than a Bill Gates. And I'm not going to waste my time seeking an appointment with him. But if he comes my way, I've spoken at the World Economic Forum in Melbourne. He was there, I was there. He had to come through helicopter. I walked in. I asked the protesters, I said, they want me to speak inside. If you give me permission, I'll go. If you don't give me permission, I won't. They said, no, for you, we will open up. They let me go. I was there. I won't avoid him, but I won't kill myself trying to meet him. Yeah, last.
Part of the argument I hear for why people are welcoming Bill Gates into this space is that governments simply won't fund the kind of things that he's funding, like this $100 billion towards green development. And so I'm wondering what you think, both in terms of green development and what we're talking about in terms of building local economies, what the role of public financing is. While there is so much austerity.
Okay, no, so that's a wrong framing. If you look at what is financing a bad agriculture that's killing our health, killing the planet, destroying our small farmers, $400 billion of subsidies